Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Prospect Corner here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by my other experts here at the Hockey Writers, Peter Baracchini and Dayton Reimer. We've got the trio back together. We've had a duo the last 2 weeks, alternating between Peter and Dayton. But Peter, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going great. Great to be back with all three of us together, and yeah, just looking forward to creating some more content when talking about drafts, teams, prospects, everything.
Yeah, for sure. And Dayton, how's it going?
Oh, things are good. Just happy to be back on the three team, I guess.
For sure. And we're going to keep going with our series as we go through the off season, the dog days of the summer. Not much is happening in anywhere until the Hlinka Gretzky gets going in beginning of August. We'll have that to talk about, so that'll be great. But we're going to keep going with our series and talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets on this episode and talking about their prospect pool, their draft picks, and their draft class in the 2024 draft, and a bunch of other fun stuff. So let's get started, though, and we're going to talk about the 2025 draft coming up because, of course, the 2024 draft, once that's over, we shift really quickly to the next one. And Peter, you put out way too early rankings for the top 32. You always do this every year. And I know Andrew's getting one out soon as well, and Logan as well. So you were the first one to put them out. So let's just quickly and just might touch on some names that we're going to start, of course, talk a lot about in the coming year. So start us off with your top five or early top five.
Yeah, I don't know how this is going to pan out because there is a consensus number one, but it's not like a for sure fire thing at the moment, but it eventually could be. So at number one at the moment, I have James Hagens, who's part of the national team development program, but is slated to be at Boston College this year. So hopefully that is going to be the case, and hopefully he's going to have a tremendous freshman season, the NCAA, or if that's later on, doesn't matter. I think he's going to be highly touted no matter what, and the one to watch in this year's class. Number two, Porter Martone from the previously Mississauga Steelheads, but now Brampton Steelheads. Strong, highly skilled power forward. Really love the way that he plays the game with the intensity, and he has like that combination of equal parts playmaker, shooter, power forward, getting in on the attack. He's very fearless, and we saw it at the U18s, and he really solidified his spot as a potential top 3 pick. Number 3 is Anton Frondo from Your Gardens IF from the J20 level. Also, he reminds me a little bit of Leo Carlson in the sense that, strong two-way pivot, very highly skilled, great hands, great speed, but he's already getting those opportunities at the senior level. So that's something to look at right now about how his maturity, his awareness and confidence to be at that level is really outstanding right now. And, at the international level, he's been absolutely fantastic. 4 is Ivan Ryabkin from MHK Dynamo Moskva from the MHL. Matvei Michkov in 2023. Ivan Demidov this past season, and now Ivan Ryabkin is another, creative offensive catalyst. That's something that teams would want to look at this season. Really, really strong production last season in the MHL, where he finished 6th with 58 points in 44 games. So that's something to keep an eye out when he, takes another step forward at that level. And number 5 is Michael Misa from the Saginaw Spirit of the OHL, aka the Memorial Cup champs. Really highly skilled, playmaker, great hands, great playmaking abilities. You wonder why maybe someone who's been slated as the, he was given exceptional status in the OHL level. You may think he'd be maybe a little bit higher. That's not the case to say that he can't rise up. It's just there needs to be a little bit more of a certain level of dominance to his game. I mean, he's been progressively better each season. I think this one coming up is one where he's going to prove himself and maybe move a little bit higher up, but you can't deny the skill set and the smarts that he has.
That's a good top five. We've talked about James Hagens a lot already. I mean, kind of because there's just so many guys that do so well even during the current draft year. And I know Hagens had a great, U18s, and we were talking about him a lot. All the 2024 draft guys were of course talked about too, but they were talked about. Dayton, what do you think about this top five? I know it's very early. I don't know how much you've looked at some of these guys, but what do you think of the top five?
Yeah, very early. There's no doubt in that. But I mean, does draft season ever end, right?
Yeah, right.
I was really surprised at the U18s at how good James Hagens was. And I think I could see him taking a hold on the first overall pick, kind of like Macklin Celebrini. Like he wasn't a guarantee at the start of the season, but he slowly just distanced himself to a point where he was the unanimous choice, and the Sharks didn't even try to hide the fact that they were going to take him. Also, Porter Martone. I hadn't really heard of him until that U18 tournament, and then all of a sudden he's putting up massive points. He was a captain too, which was somewhat surprising for me. Being, kind of out west, I hadn't heard as much about him. So yeah, definitely two very impressive guys at the top. We'll see if that stays, but yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting draft class for sure.
Well, there's already a difference. We got a Swede in the projected in the top 10. We didn't have that this past draft. So there's already a bit of a change. And I mean, it probably wasn't going to last. I mean, this Sweden just pumps out talent. So there's going to be some really good guys. And I think 2026 also has some strong Swedes. So yeah, they're coming back. All right, Peter, continue us on with the rest of your top 10.
Yeah, so this is going to be a really tough one in terms of like who's going to be my top defender, but at the moment it's Matthew Schaefer from the Erie Otters. Really great composure and confidence that we saw last season, and he started to get acclimated at the OHL level. Really stood out at the U18 tournament. It's been noted that he was playing with a heavy heart last season, losing both his mother and billet mother in the process as well. So he really was playing with a lot of emotion, a lot of, a lot riding on last season. And he really, stepped up in light of what happened in his personal life. So really, really sad to hear, but, he really showed great courage in his rookie season. Right after that is Logan Hensler from the National Team Development Program. Again, solid two-way puck moving defender. Great smarts in any situation that he plays in. I think he's going to be a really strong top pairing defender this season and potentially in the future. Just really love the awareness that he brings. At 8 is Roger McQueen from the Brandon Wheat Kings. Just the throwback power forward type player with the physicality, the intensity, the shot, and the offensive game that he brings. Maybe a little bit low right now, but obviously when he was with the Brandon Wheat Kings last season, he was a top producer. I think this is going to be a season where he starts to pop off and stand out a little bit more, where he's going to get more minutes and more opportunity. At 9 is Malcolm Spence, again, from the Erie Otters. Really love the tenacity and pace that he brings to his game. Really great speed, great hands, and a powerful shot. If you remember the name, it should sound familiar because he scored the game-winning goal against Czechia at the Helinka Gretzky Cup last tournament. So we'll see what he brings this time around. I think he's just going to be another dominant factor in his draft year. And at 10 is Caleb Denoye from the Moncton Wildcats. Really tore it up offensively as a rookie. He's got the frame, he's got the speed, the IQ, and the puck control in tight spaces. I think that he's going to be up for another strong season in his sophomore year, but also in his draft year as well.
Yeah, I think the top five. I mean, obviously, all these guys are gonna. There's it's gonna be changes. We do that every year with different rankings. Dayton, what do you think about the rest of the top 10? I mean, this is probably all gonna change, but what do you
Yeah.
think of the names in there right now?
No, it's a really good top 10. Most of those guys I have tried to pay a little bit of attention to, and I would probably rank them very similarly. I'm a little higher on Roger McQueen. I've seen him play a couple of times now, and he is always noticeable. And he was playing on some pretty good Brandon Wheat Kings teams,
Mhm.
and he stood out as a 16 to 17-year-old. So I think that is going to set him up really well. I mean, it also helps that he's 6'5". You do stand out anyways. And then yeah, Caleb Denoyer is he's showed up on a few viewings I had of the Otters, just watching some clips, trying to focus on some 2024 draft guys. And I was like convinced that he was going to be drafted this year. And then I looked it up. It's like, no, he's draftable next year. Okay.
Yeah.
Because he looked good enough to be drafted this year. He was playing really, really well. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how he does with the Moncton Wildcats. I think he will be kind of that leading force of a QMJHL revolution, if you want to
Hmm.
call it that. Resurgence maybe is a better word. Yeah, there's a couple of really interesting guys from the Q who are going to be first round picks.
Yeah, it's a difference from this draft because there weren't a lot of guys that it was pretty weak class for the Q, but yeah, already we're starting to see some of that resurgence for this year. So yeah, lots of great names already in that top 10, and of course we're gonna dive more into it as the year goes on. I just a quick thing before we move on. Peter, who are you watching for the Hlinka Gretzky in August? I know we're gonna go way more into it, but just a quick name for people to kind of keep an eye on in that tournament when it gets going.
Yeah, so it's a little too early to tell because a lot of the rosters haven't been selected yet, but you could rest assured that most of these names are going to be on there. I don't think James Higgins is probably going to be there. Looking at the preliminary roster for USA or the camp roster for the Hlinka Gretzky Cup, I don't see his name on there. Neither Logan Hensler or Charlie Trethewey, who is another top defender that I have ranked in my top 15. Unless I'm missing something, but I don't see their names there at the moment. Um, but you would have to think that for Team Canada, names like, Matthew Schaefer, um, Caleb Denoyer, a lot of these players that have like a lot of potential that, are still young, but have the opportunity to play for their team at the next level. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with some of the Swedish born players as well. I think, players like Jakubis Wozniak, um, again, there's really no word on any names being made available for the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's one player that I would really like to get a better look at is Yves Wozniak, because he's a player that just flew not necessarily under the radar, but um, he's got a lot of skill in his game, and he was a very productive player in the J20 level as as a younger player. So he's one name I want to keep an eye on. Cole Reshny as well. Um, I have him ranked 12th, undersized, because he's outside my top 10 because basically that's going to play into a factor, but you can't deny the skill and evasiveness that he has to his game as well. So, really looking to see what he brings. And again, those are just some names. There's not a whole lot made available at this point, but we'll definitely know closer when the camp roster, or not necessarily the camp rosters, but when the team is basically finalized at that point.
Yeah, it is kind of early. We're 2 weeks away from the tournament. August 5th is when that gets going, and it's in Edmonton, which is great because we can actually watch these games at reasonable times. They're not weird times if they're in Europe. So yeah, next week for our next episode, we'll probably get a bit more of a clear picture. We'll just probably have some semblance of rosters maybe a week out from it. So we'll maybe revisit that. A bit of an early question right now. All right. Let's move to continue our series, and we're going to continue with the Columbus Blue Jackets, and just go quickly through their 2024 draft class. And Peter, get us going with Caden Lindstrom, who they drafted in the first round, and I don't think he dropped to them. I mean, all the other guys, there wasn't any real surprise, except for obviously Beck Seneca, which kind of maybe changed a bit of things. But Columbus went 4th overall with Caden Lindstrom. What do you think about that pick? And how do you think Lindstrom is going to fit into the Blue Jackets system? You can go as detailed as you want of when you think he's going to come to the NHL, but I'll let you go with that.
Yeah, I had a really detailed, interviewer analysis with one of his trainers too, Sumit Ware, who really gave an in-depth look at training and getting to the bottom of Lindstrom's skill set and the success that he's going to have at the next level. It's online at the Hockey Writers. You can definitely check that out from this past year's draft coverage. But I think it was a fantastic pick. I think it was going to be Caden Lindstrom if he was available. 100% was. There was a possibility. I mean, I had him as a top 3 prospect. He just bumped down 1 spot. I'm not going to complain about that on my final rankings, but it's definitely gold for the Columbus Blue Jackets, where they kind of seemed a little bit thin up the middle behind Adam Fantilli. I mean, you got Luca Pinelli, you have Cole Sillinger as well, but they amount to more of the middle / bottom part of the roster. Caden Lindstrom gives you that for sure fire top 6 power forward, centerman. And there's just a lot to like with this game. The speed, the speed factor, the offensive awareness, the shot, the ability to just bully his way through the competition and opponents. I mean, you look at the size, you look at how he's able to get to the middle of the ice and use that to his advantage consistently. It shows that they got a really talented player on their hands, and I think him and Fantilli are gonna provide a very strong dynamic duo up the middle of the ice for them. So it gives them that reassurance now where you have a for sure fire top 6 or second line center where what you're getting with him, and the intensity that he brings every single time, the work ethic, it's always there, it's always evident. And I think if it wasn't for the injuries that he had towards the second half of the season, he probably could have been top 3, but it was a non-factor when it was an interview during the interviews at the combine. He even said that as well. The fact that he was still a top 5 prospect says it all, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he could bring at the next level. I think he can arrive sooner rather than later because he's got a lot of qualities in his game that's already translatable to the pro level. Don't want to give a for sure time frame, but if everything goes right, maybe 2 max 3 years. A lot to develop, but he's definitely got the size. He's got the intensity, the skating, everything. So that's a big plus for the Columbus Blue Jackets right now, where they have a pro or a player that's closer to pro ready than maybe some of the other players that are in the draft class. So obviously love the pick, love it 10 times over every single time. If I was in their spot every single time and he was available, I would take him. So yeah, definitely a great selection.
Yeah, I mean, you say with Adam Fantilli and him, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch down the middle. And even if Cole Sillinger hits, I mean, he had a really great first season, but kind of regressed in his second year. But I think if he ends up being a 3rd line center and you've got those 3 guys, that's a pretty good, 3 to play and be, you definitely need 2 deep, and getting 3, they're going to be set up for quite a while. All right, moving into the second round, they picked Charlie Elick at 36th overall. And, the Blue Jackets have a really strong defensive group. We're going to get into that later on here. But it's kind of interesting they went defense, and they actually chose 4 defensemen in this draft, and which is kind of interesting to me because defense, they got such a logjam, and maybe a little less now. They let Adam Boquist go. That kind of freed it up. But overall, they're still pretty strong on defense, but getting Elick at 36, I know, Peter, you had him in the early second round, and that's where they ended up picking him. One of the best skaters in this draft class, a really great skater. Not as much maybe offensively, but he's a great defender. And I think that's where he's going to kind of lean towards the NHL. He's going to be that more, I want to say, I always say modern day defensive defensemen, where they're great skaters, they can move the puck, but are one of the better defenders, hockey IQ wise, defending their own zone, which is what you need. You need the, the Jacob Slavins, those types of defenders in the NHL now that can put up some points, but mostly they're there for their calm defensive game. And I think Ehrlich brings that. He's big, great skater, great defense, good hitter. So, I mean, most of it is he'll lean towards that part. I mean, he's maybe has to develop a bit of that offense into his game, but I think that's not a big deal, as big of a deal if he's just that really solid, great skating defensive defenseman. I think the Blue Jackets will be okay with that in the future because they do have their offensive guys. And I think Ehrlich was a good pick for their second pick in this draft. So I liked that pick a lot. And right-hand shot too, which brings, of course, we all love the right-hand shot defenseman. And I've liked Ehrlich, so I really like that pick. All right, we go forward defense. They went goaltender for their second round pick and 60th overall. And I thought, Dayton, you'd be a great one to talk about him. So Evan Gardner, they picked with their third pick of the draft. What do you think about that pick? I'm sure you like it because I know you played for the Blades. So what do you think about that pick for the Blue Jackets?
Yes, he does play for the Blades. I've watched him numerous times. He's a great goalie. I was super surprised to see him go 60th. In the draft profile that I wrote about him, I thought third round at the earliest because I looked at the goalie class and there was a lot of guys who were really interesting. And comparatively, Evan Gardner is undersized and like 6'2" isn't small, but NHL teams want like 6'4" goalies, and going below that makes them riskier for some reason. Kind of like everyone forgets about UC Saros, but whatever. Evan Gardner is really good technically. He's a very strong technical goalie. He's got all the positioning down. He's a very athletic goalie too. He can move across the crease very quickly. He led the WHL with a .927 save percentage and a .191 goals against average. He was incredible statistically, and it does help to have a really strong team in front of him. But the other goalie they had, Austin Elliott, struggled at times. He was a little inconsistent, and he was older. He should have had that kind of starting position locked down. He lost it to Gardner, and so the Blue Jackets made him the fourth goalie off the board, which, again, surprising, but I loved it. And I think they're going to get a really good starter potentially in this pick. He has the ability to really improve and really show his growth next year. He does have a little bit to work on in kind of his rebound control, and I did notice some issues with his blocker side. His glove side's really good, blocker side not so much. But he, maybe a bit riskier, but definitely worth it. He could be an incredible goalie in the future sometime.
We all know how interesting with their development goaltenders are, so we don't know when these guys are going to end up being in the NHL. So he's going to be in the system and developing, and we'll see where he goes from here. But I really like that too. I mean, a second round pick may be a little high, but I mean, obviously they saw something in him, and we'll see what he does down the road. All right, moving into, I believe it was the third round, and this Luca Morelli, another defenseman the Blue Jackets picked. And Peter, what did you think about that pick for their third round pick?
Yeah, it really, I mean, not necessarily a questionable one because they got a lot of strong defensive prospects coming up in the system, but it's one that gives them a little bit more reassurance and a little bit more depth and options to work with in the future. I mean, I honestly, I really, out of the two defenders on Oshawa Generals between Morelli and Danford, obviously Danford went in the first round because of that smarts and the strong defensive game, but I really came away impressed with Morelli all season long. I really took note of his dynamicism and puck moving abilities from the back end. He's got that ability to read the play very, very well. spot scenes. He's strong on the breakout. It's kind of funny enough because he was taken 86th overall. I had him still in that third round, a little bit higher up at 71, but you know, the Blue Jackets came away with a really great value pick in that third round because of the potential that he has. He again, the playmaking is always there. He's very strong at 5-on-5. Has great mobility on the back end, but also his defensive game still a work in progress. But there are a lot of positives to take from his defensive game as well, where he's got the awareness and positioning. He just needs to get a little bit stronger and have that awareness a little bit more. But the height and size advantage, he's definitely got that going. He's very competitive on the back end. And when you join a list of like top defensive prospects, like won't be long for David Juracek, but you still have Dayton Matejchik in the system, Stanislav Svozil, Samuel Nazco, Carson Kuhlmans, Charlie Elick now Luca Morelli. They are very deep in terms of substance and quality on the back end. And Morelli just adds that as a dynamic, offensive two-way type of defender for them.
Yeah, I mean, you can never have too many defensemen in your system, prospect wise, and forwards too. I mean, if you get rid of them through trade, they don't develop. I don't know. I mean, more quantity I mean, there's more is better than not as many. So I think Morelli was a good pick there. Moving on to the fourth round, and they picked another defenseman. They kept the run on defenseman in the fourth round, 101 overall, and this is Tanner Henricks. Not Hendricks, Henricks. He's another defensive defenseman, and a mobile defensive defenseman, maybe a little less skilled than Elick, but seems like he's a very similar type of defender. He's the same type of size, 6'3", a good skater. He hits. He's got good block shots. He'll lean more the defensive side of the game, but. It's a good pick down in the later rounds. I mean, if you already know the defensive side of the game, you can maybe make the NHL a little faster and be that maybe a bottom pairing guy. And you need those guys in the NHL. I mean, these guys need to be, you need them in your system. You need them in your lineup. And, they're not afraid to hit and block shots and get into those dirty areas. And Henricks definitely will do that. And of course, having that skating ability, which is what you need in the NHL now too. You can't be a bad skater, and he's a good skater too. So, I mean, when you're getting down to the later rounds, he was a good pick there. All right, finishing it off, Dayton, again, another defenseman, Luke Ashton, with their final pick of the draft. And this was in the 6th round. They didn't have a 7th round pick. They also skipped the 5th round. So what do you think about their final pick of the 2024 draft?
Yeah, I mean, a 7th round pick, you're taking a big risk, right? And I think there's an emphasis on big with this pick. Luke Ashton stands 6'6", 6'7", depending on where you read. I've seen both, but he played in BCHL last season. He was the top scoring defenseman on Langley, the team that he was on, played some big minutes, used his size really well, and was arguably one of the most improved players of the league. He's going off to Minnesota State next season, or I guess this season. He seems to be an interesting prospect. He's got that size. He's got, decent mobility. He could become something. We'll see how the few years at the NCAA level goes for him.
Definitely has the size, like you said. So, I mean, he's got that going for him already. And it looks like that's what the Blue Jackets kind of went for in this draft. A lot of big guys, defensemen and forwards. I mean, forward. Kane Lindstrom's not a small guy either. I mean, maybe the goalie's your smallest guy that they picked. And he's not really small either. So yeah, it seems like they've emphasized size, and of course, all the defensemen that they picked are all good skaters, too. So pretty good draft overall for the Blue Jackets. I think just having Lindstrom and Elick, was a pretty good draft as in itself. So yeah, overall, a good pick, good draft for them this year. All right, moving from the draft into the rest of their prospect pool, and we're just going to do a quick overview of the rest of it's a pretty strong pool. and just added to what they got from the 2024 draft. So we're going to start with the forwards, and they've got, like I say, pretty strong group of forwards at the top of them. I mean, we'll go into their strengths and weaknesses, but mostly they're pretty strong in all their positions. So, Peter, who do you want to kind of focus on in this forward group? They've got some really strong guys beyond Caden Lindstrom, who just adds to it. Who do you want to focus on in this forward group?
I'm still going to go with Gavin Brindley. He was one of my favorite late round picks. I know you're already smiling at that because I can't stop talking about him. I really enjoy the intensity, the skill set that he brings. He's still on that undersized side of the game, but it doesn't matter to him because he plays with great intensity and he always has great body positioning to win battles. He gets out of there quickly and he's always attacking the middle of the ice. Um, for they're starting to get deep up the middle, but they needed some depth on the wing and on that right side. And, with guys like Chinikov, Marchenko, a lot of these names started to make their way up into the system. Brindley is one of those names that really stood out for me. And when the Columbus Blue Jackets selected them 34th overall, I was with Mark Shag at the draft um, in Nashville, and I told them that, you know what, you guys got a great pick with Gavin Brindley. Like that is a great value pick right then and there. So yeah, I'm gonna keep talking about him until he makes the NHL, but he already has one game under his belt, but I mean, it's only just beginning. I mean, he was dominant at the University of Michigan, and the fact that he already made the jump to the NHL right now, look out because he's gonna shed that prospect label very, very soon.
I'll say, I mean, you just go back to Prospect Corner throughout the draft year. I love Gavin Brindley. He's undersized, but probably one of the more harder working players. Great motor, great everything that I love in a player. I kept comparing him to Connor Garland because I really think he's that type of forward that he'll be at. He may even be better than Garland. I don't know, but we'll see how it all pans out. But yeah, I love Gavin Brindley. I think he's one of their top forwards in their prospect pool. Beyond, well, obviously Lindstrom's at the top, but Brindley's really, really rising up in this pool. And if you want to rank them, and we will a little later. Dayton, what about you? Who do you want to focus on from this strong pool of prospects? I mean, they've got a lot of guys. Jordan Dumais. I mean, you want go down the list. Who do you want to focus on here?
Well, not just to take the only guy you mentioned, but I was going to talk about Jordan Dumais. I think he is one of the most interesting prospects, maybe in the NHL. He put up 140 points last season, or 2 seasons ago. I'm still getting used to the being in the 24-25 season right now.
Yeah, right.
54 goals, 140 points in 22-23, 21 points in 15 playoff games. Like he just could not stop scoring. He's got the speed, he's got the playmaking ability, he's got the goal scoring ability. Like with the puck, he is one of the most dangerous players anywhere. Last season was a bit more injury ridden. He only managed 21 games, but in that stretch, he had 47 points, which would have put him on pace to hit nearly 150 if he played this season. So he did not take a step back. He just couldn't stay healthy, which is going to be the concern as he goes into the AHL this season. Can he overcome that size deficit? And I think he can. Lots of little guys have, managed to do that and managed to become very successful players. He'll just need probably a little bit more time to get that strength because he is still only 174 pounds, according to his Elite Prospects page. But at 5'9", that's pretty decent. He just needs a little bit more time. And then he could be a top 6 forward playing along the likes of Caden Lindstrom and Gavin Brindley.
Yeah, I mean, Dumais was my next one I was kind of going to talk about. So there you go, Dayton. You got in front of me. But the other guys that they've got, like Luca Pinelli's another one that he had a really, really good season in the OHL this past season with the 67s at 82 points in 68 games, 48 goals there. So I mean, over a point a game, and I really liked when they picked him. Pinelli's one of those, maybe a bit again undersized, 5'9", fourth round pick that last draft. So I mean, great. I think he's going to end up being something maybe down the line. He's captain of the 67s too, so he has that leadership. Yeah. So I mean, Pinelli's another one that's part of this forward group that they've got going. They're pretty strong. I mean, you got Kane Lindstrom in there. Martin Rasavi's another notable guy. Had 25 goals this past season. Of course, I mean, Cole Sillinger's not a prospect anymore, but one of those type, younger guys that they've got. Overall, if they can get a coach, like they've got a coach now, Dean Evison, so if they can have all that settled for a few seasons, maybe they can start building this team and actually see how they're going to be in the future, because they've got so much young talent coming up and already on the team that could end up being a really strong team down the road here. Right, moving to defensemen, and they've got a lot of talent here too. We already mentioned a couple names. I know Peter in passing mentioned Denton Mateychuk. He's probably their biggest name on this list right now. Of course, David Jiricek, who was in the NHL this past season and the AHL. He was really good already. He's already a good pro, and he maybe still technically a prospect. But Dayton, who do you want to focus on the defensive side here? Because and they added a lot more at this draft too.
Yeah, I will go with Andrew Strathman, who I think is not their top guy, but definitely somebody to keep an eye on. He is more of an offensive defenseman. He was a fourth round pick in 2023. He played in the USHL last season. He was the captain of the Youngstown Phantoms. 39 points, 48 games, also 120 penalty minutes. So he has the offensive gifts and also violence. He does not shy away. He uses his all of his strength. He's a little undersized at 5'11", but he doesn't back down. And I think that is something that is very notable for a defenseman coming up. You definitely want somebody who can stop some of the bigger players, and he shows that he can. He'll be at the University of North Dakota for this season, which fantastic place. He'll definitely build up that strength and that consistency, and probably in 2 or 3 seasons, he'll be a Blue Jacket. He is a very good prospect for them.
I'll add another couple names to Corson Kuhlman's another one. That's a big one I missed. Aiden Horeschuk. Just keep going here. They do have a lot of good names on their list here. So Peter, anyone else you want to focus on a bit more here?
Yeah, I still feel like Svozio gets overlooked because of how deep this team really is. Obviously, he may not have the offensive upside compared to that of a Denton Mateychuk or a David Jiricek at the next level, but he had 23 points last season with the Cleveland Monsters. His first basically pro season as a rookie, pretty impressive stuff actually. I mean, he had one game with the AHL or with the Monsters in 22-23, and then 2 with the Blue Jackets, in that season as well. But for getting a first full pro season under his belt, I thought he looked really good. And they're going to need that two-way type of defender that could shut things down, be very strong defensively, and be very active to defend well against the Russians. Vozil does just that. So he may not be getting a lot of attention because of what they already have, but he's definitely going to be a key piece for them going forward in the future. And another dark horse, I'm just going to throw his name out there, Ollie Julian Bjorkvik Holm. He was a 5th round pick in 2020. Saw him play with the Mississauga Steelheads. I really like the composure that he has on the defensive side of the game. Again, you need those type of players. He's very physical. He's in your face, and he just takes everything away from attacking forwards. Like, he's very composed and very sound positionally. Played in the ECHL for the Cincinnati Cyclones, 33 points. Hopefully he gets more of an opportunity this season with the Monsters because, I mean, very productive last season at that level, but let's see if he can translate that at the next level and be a little bit more productive, but not stray away from his strengths. I think that's going to be a name to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I love his name too. He's one guy I know has been mentioned a bit in the last couple seasons here. So I like that too. One guy I really like that I didn't mention in the forwards was William Whitelaw. And I liked him in his draft year. He had 36 goals with the Youngstown Phantoms. And then this past season, he was with the University of Wisconsin, 10 goals in 37 games. Decent for his freshman season. He's moving to the University of Michigan. Obviously a crazy program that they've got this season. So I'm going to be excited to see what he does with Michigan because, well, they've developed NHLers who seem to do it. So yeah, I think Whitelaw, again, very, very exciting prospect that they drafted last draft in the 3rd round. I had him ranked in the 2nd round, I believe, at times. So I really like Whitelaw. Again, undersized, 5'9", but very skilled. So I like him too. All right, dark horses. I mean, the goaltenders, there's not a lot of big names that they've got actually in their system. So maybe if you want to mention some goalies, I know Evan Gardner's probably their top prospect for goaltenders now. I mean, unless you guys want to debate me on that one.
No, I'm good.
Anyone else, really? Yeah,
Yeah, I was just about to say, it seems like Gardner is their top goaltending prospect at the moment. You could have made the case for Nolan Lalonde, but he also kind of lost that. He kind of split time with Andrew Oka, but he seemed to be the starter for the Saginaw Spirit that season. Maybe even like Zach Sadchenko. I thought he had, a good small sample, I believe with Abbotsford in the AHL. Yeah, and 401 record, 924 save percentage, 212 goals against average. So some upside there, something to keep an eye on, but yeah, kind of a mixed bag, or you need to see what you get with a better team in front of them.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, I think Gardner's definitely now their top prospect on the goaltending side, and we'll see how he goes. I mean, they used to have really strong goaltending prospects, and now that's probably why they picked Gardner in the 2nd round because they need it for sure. All right. Anyone else you want to mention? We have not mentioned. I'll give you the floor. So, Dayton, who else do you want to mention from their prospect pool that we have not talked about?
Maybe Max McHugh. He always kind of jumps out as somebody who he feels a little underrated at times, but he did really well with the London Knights this season. 61 points, 62 games. He even was one of their tougher guys, believe it or not. Like he's not a big guy, but he led the team in penalty minutes with 110. And then in the playoffs, put up 22 points in 18 games. Yeah, he's got something there and doesn't often make it into the conversation of like the top 5 guys with the Blue Jackets, but he'll be making his professional debut this season, and I think he's definitely a player worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, there's definitely maybe some bottom 6 potential there for him. So yeah,
maybe
you
middle
need those
6,
guys.
I think.
Middle 6. Yeah, that type of yeah, we'll see where he goes. Peter, what about you? Anyone else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I was going to highlight McHugh myself. I mean, strong character guy, one of the leaders on the Knights. This is a guy that lays it out on the line and he'll do anything to win. I thought that was a great signing by the Blue Jackets to sign or to take him on. And, this is going to be one that'll pay off very well. You need to fill out that bottom part of the roster, and he's definitely going to be that in your face type of player that's just not going to give up every single night. So, yeah, definitely one of those names that need to be highlighted.
And I will finish off with James Malatesta, 5th round pick. He made his NHL debut this past season, 11 games, 4 points, 2 goals there. And then I mean, not a lot of production, 12 goals in 56 games with the Cleveland Monsters, but he was a pretty good scorer in the queue with 37 goals in his last season there. And then, but he could be a potential bottom six, third, fourth line player because of his motor, his energy that he brings. And he's already shown that he can score in the NHL. I mean, 2 goals in 11 games. That's pretty decent for a first bit there. Had a bit of a cup of coffee with the Blue Jackets. We'll see if he gets a bit more time this next season. I guess it all depends on how Dean Evison kind of brings the young guys in. And now they've got a coach that we'll see how he brings the young talent along. And had a pretty good in Minnesota with their young guys. So we'll see how it ends up being with guys like Malatesta and all their other young talent that they got. All right, let's finish it off. Top 5 prospects. Peter, who's your top 5 right now for the Blue Jackets?
Ooh, this is going to be tough. I mean, I think this could go either way. 1, 2, either it's going to be Matejchuk or Lindstrom Matejchuk. I think that's pretty much a given right there. Those are your top 2 guys that are going to be relied on in the future. Think you're looking at Gavin Brindley at 3, Charlie Elik at 4, and I'm going to go with Stanislav Zvozil at 5 for now as my top 5 prospects for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
All right, Dayton, what about you? What's your top 5?
Well, top 3 are exactly the same. Lindstrom, Matejchuk, Brindley. Those guys need to be there. And then I would go with Dume and Strathman. I think they have a little bit higher on the offensive upside, but I think Elik and Svozil are also fantastic and worth considering in the top 5.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm the same. Matejchuk. I mean, I'd go Lindstrom first, Brindley second, and even though I love Brindley, I think Lindstrom obviously has the higher upside. Lindstrom, Brindley, Matejchuk. I really like Elik, so I'll go 4 for Elik, and then 5. It's tough. I'm gonna go Coolman's at 5. I really love his upside still. I mean, maybe a bit older now, but I still think he's gonna end up being really good in the NHL at some point here. So I'm gonna go with Coolman's.
I would like to make a point that we've been talking about Jordan Dumais and the Columbus Blue Jackets this whole entire episode, and I completely forgot to not put him in my top 5. Like I was probably trying to blank there.
Oh geez, I didn't.
But yeah, no. If that's the case, yeah, I'll add Dumais into my top 5. So scratch that, reverse it, add Dumais into my top 5 right then and there. Thanks, Dayton. I don't know what I was thinking. I feel foolish.
No worries.
I'm gonna stick with my 5. I'm gonna go with Dumais at 6 then. Just to we're not going top beyond that, but that I'll say that. All right, quickly, we'll talk about strengths and weaknesses. I think for strengths, they're good in each of their categories. I mean, now that they've got Gardner, I think maybe goaltending was probably their bit of their weakness, but now they got Gardner, I think they've got pretty good there. So the strengths, I think, is just I'm still going to go their strength still on defense because they do have a lot more on that side. So for me, their strong suit is on defense, but barely. Peter, what do you think about for strengths of this pool?
Yeah, definitely defense. Forwards are getting up there, especially when you have names like Dumais. There we go. I remembered him. Brindley and, Caden Lindstrom, but even with guys starting to make their way up, like Luca Del Bel Baluz, as well, who scored in his first NHL game as well. So there's something to keep an eye on there as another underrated prospect in the system. So you need to add a little bit more up front. They got a lot of strong pieces there, but defense is definitely their strength.
Yeah, and they added more in the 2024 draft. So, Dayton, what about you? What do you think is their strengths? Do you agree it's the defense there?
Oh yeah. Not going to be a big, counterpoint guy here right now. I think their defense, more specifically, is very mobile.
Mm-hmm.
They can really push the play. They've got sort of that really modern, high mobility, very agile defense. Looking at guys like Matejchuk and Strathman and Elik, even though he's a very defensive guy, he likes to try to jump up and, push the play. I don't think he's very good at it yet, but he likes it. And then, yeah, they have a lot of guys who can just put the puck in the net. They're very dynamic offensive players, lots of intelligence, lots of high-end goal scoring ability. Yeah, it's a really well balanced prospect pool. Definitely one of the better ones in the NHL, which is why we're talking about it so early.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a lot of massive weaknesses in there. It's a very good group, and it just got even stronger with 2024 draft class.
For sure. I say probably their weakness is still goaltending, maybe depth wise. Now you just have Gardner. I mean, you need a bit more in the future, but I mean, overall, they're a pretty strong pool. And I think, you know, hopefully, I'm thinking Blue Jackets fans are hoping that they're not going to be adding any more big name prospects because they want to be making the playoffs soon here. But we'll see how they go this season. All right. Three quick fire questions to end the episode. Peter, I'll start with you with this one. Which prospect do you see having a breakout season this year? I mean, a lot of strong guys. Who do you see having a great season?
I hope it's not at the NHL level because I don't think any of them are ready to make that jump just yet. Um, but I would like to see what Jordan Dumais can do at the AHL level. I mean, we talked about how dominant he was at the QMJHL, where he had posted basically 249 points in 2 seasons, plus another 47 last season and only 21 games played. So he was well on that mark to try and make it back to back or, 3 consecutive 100-point seasons, which would have been impressive. I hope that he continues that offensive dominance at the AHL level because he definitely has that in him, despite the size factor. It doesn't get the best of him. He's just very, very creative, very crafty, and very shifty for his height. And definitely I'm looking forward to him having a breakout season at the pro level.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Dumais can do in the AHL level too. So I like that pick. Dane, what about you? Who do you see having a breakout season?
I think it's Gavin Brindley. I think he's been
Mhm.
excellent in the last, little bit here. He was great at the World Juniors, finished his college at the University of Michigan and excellently played a game with the Blue Jackets. I think he's ready to make an impact, and they need guys to make an impact. They need a bit of a jump start. I think he's ready for it.
We'll see where it is. Is it in the
Mhm.
AHL? Is it in the NHL? We'll find out with this next question. So, who could make an impact in the NHL this season? I mean, a lot of guys you can pick. Some guys that, of course, made their NHL debuts this past season. I could be a rookie. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about Caden Lindstrom if he's going to end up having any chance of making an impact this year. But Dayton, who do you see making an impact in Columbus?
Um, well, I think Brindley will be a breakout star. He'll probably do that in the minors. I think Denton Mateychuk comes into the NHL and has maybe not a Cale Makar level season, but something comparable to it. He's just been dominant at every level. He played 4 games in the playoffs for the Cleveland Monsters last year, had 3 points in it. So he plays that very adaptable game, and I think he could jump in and have a very successful rookie season.
I like that. And I love Denton Mateychuk again. I go back to episodes. He was one of my favorite defensemen when he was drafted. So I like that one. I agree. I think he could have an impact this season. I'm picking Gavin Brindley because Gavin Brindley. I really think he can have a real big impact in the NHL level. Maybe not a huge offensive season, but I think he'll make a difference. Being in the third, fourth lines, maybe to start, but I see him in the NHL a lot of the time this year, just because of that motor and that ability to be a great forechecker and get under the skin of players and just be that skilled. I think he can end up being a really good guy in this season. So I'm going Brindley as making an impact. Peter, what about you? Who do you see?
Not necessarily bold, but I do agree that Mateychuk possibly could make things difficult for the Blue Jacket staff, especially in that first 9 games. Like if he excels, look out because then you got a defenseman that could have that type of impact from the back end with his mobility and puck movement that could really throw everyone off. I mean, he didn't play any games for the Cleveland Monsters, but he played in 4 playoff games and had 3 assists. So talk about big moment, talk about, playing in the key situation for the Monsters. And then obviously, he went to the Memorial Cup and was a standout producer there against some of junior hockey's best. And he was lights out good. So I really think that that's a good possibility. On the safe side, I'm going to say Luca Del Belbaluz because of the fact that he has one more game of NHL experience since Denton Mateychuk. I probably, picking hairs or picking straws right there because of that factor, but he has the AHL experience under him. I think there's a need for some help more up front right now. And I think there's a more of a possibility of something opening up for him than Mateychuk, but it's not out of the possibility that Mateychuk can steal a spot from somebody and be a top 6 defender for the Blue Jackets.
Yeah, we'll see who can make a difference. Again, this is going to end up being what Dean Evison likes and where he's going to put these guys, because again, new coach, new system, and we'll see how all these prospects kind of fit in that new system too. All right, last question. Dane, I'll start with you. Who needs to bounce back or show more development in their game this coming season? Because I mean, a lot of players had good seasons this past one, but who do you see that needs to show a bit more to kind of maybe quell some concerns that maybe some people have on them?
Yeah, I'm kind of bouncing between two defensemen, and I'll just touch on them really quick here. Corson Kuhlman's, I think, had an okay rookie season in the AHL. Not what you'd expect from a first-round pick. I think he has more offensive upside than he showed, and he needs to be able to show that before he makes an NHL impact. And the other guy is Samuel Najko, who looked really good coming out of Slovakia. He's played at the World Championship since 2021, which is impressive for somebody who's only 21 years old. And he just hasn't really clicked with the Blue Jackets organization yet. I think he can. I think he can be a really solid bottom 4 defenseman. I just need to see a little bit more from him, and I hope he bounces back this coming season.
It's funny you say Kuhlman's, and Kuhlman's is my number 5 prospect. I have high hopes for him, so we'll see if he can do something this season, build on what he did in his rookie season. All right, Peter, what about you? Who do you see that needs to show a bit more this season?
I want to say Aiden Hreshuk, mainly because of the fact that I know he's still young. I know there's still a lot of development going on with his game. He's 21 years old, but with all the names that they have on defense, he really needs to step it up and make an impact to show that I'm still here. Don't forget about me, kind of thing. Again, we've talked in depth about the defense and who's available or could make the team. We were talking about Dayton Mateychuk, surpassing basically everybody and making the jump this season. Hreshuk is possibly, I'm not sure what the picture is right now for him. He's played in 3 collegiate seasons. I don't know what's going to happen if he's going to go for a 4th year or not. But if he's still unsigned too, so I think that's a sign where maybe he needs to do a little bit more and prove to them that, I got to step it up and possibly earn a contract at this point as well. Because if you're going into your final season of college hockey, still unsigned, kind of something that you need to take advantage of and prove to them that, you're worth that contract and worth being in the system a little bit longer. So I think this is going to be a big season for him, wherever he's going to be at. So we'll see what happens with him, because I think he had a lot of potential in his draft year and even after that, but he's kind of, taken a backseat because of who they drafted and who's surpassed them up the depth chart.
Yeah, and he was an acquisition too, because he was drafted by the Hurricanes and then they acquired him. So I mean, it's something that maybe they won't. I mean, obviously they wanted him, but could potentially be a guy that they'll go a guy they drafted over him eventually if he doesn't start showing a bit. But yeah, I mean, he'll move on, and they haven't signed him yet, obviously. So we'll see if they actually decide to, because he is, what is he in his 3rd? Going into his senior season. So he'll end up having to be a guy that I have to make a decision on very quickly. So I Yeah, I like that. I like Tereszcuk. I know I've had him on trade targets whenever I had Canucks wanting defensemen, and he was always one on my list. So we'll see. All right. Well, thanks, Peter. Thanks, Dayton, for coming on, talking Blue Jackets prospects, talking 2025 draft. We'll continue our series next week with our next team, but make sure to check out everything at thehockeyriders.com. We've got a still coverage from the draft going on, people reacting to the draft. Most of that's done now, but we got a lot of prospect content on the site that's talking what's happening this coming season, previewing a lot of top 10, top 15, top 20 prospect lists out. I know, Peter, you pulling out for the Maple Leafs. Dayton, I know you've talked about big prospects. I don't think, have you put out a Senators top? I don't think so.
Not yet, but I'm working on it.
You're working on it.
Yeah.
I'm trying
Prospect
to think
pyramid.
of which ones I've seen them. So Prospect Pyramid, you're working on. There you go.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for everything else coming out. I put out a Canucks top 15 yesterday, so you can check that out as well. And check out the Substack. I'm now running the free version of it, putting together all the articles that are out on the site. So check that out. But until our next episode, we'll see you next time.